Ukraine's president has warned of the challenges that the approaching winter months pose for his country's slow-moving counteroffensive against Russia. Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in the United States, rallying support from world leaders attending the United Nations General Assembly. This as his country suffers another deadly missile attack on civilian infrastructure. A loud blast rocked Kyiv and the surrounding regions. Missile debris fell in the city centre and on infrastructure nearby, sparking a blaze. Power cuts were reported across the country as energy sites were targeted, reviving memories of multiple airstrikes on critical infrastructure last winter. That period of the war left millions of Ukrainians without electricity and heat during the bitter cold. Ukraine says it's still too early to tell if the most recent attacks mark the start of a new campaign against its energy sites. But a senior official says this is a likely scenario as winter is set to arrive in just a few weeks.
The Ukrainian president is due to meet President Joe Biden to discuss more support and funding. The Ukrainian leader is also scheduled to visit the Pentagon to meet with US military leaders in a bid for more weapons. But his most crucial meeting, that's likely to be with leaders of the US Congress, where a multi-billion-dollar aid package for Kyiv hangs in the balance and where war fatigue is setting in among lawmakers. For more, Caroline Malone joins us. She's live in Washington, D.C. Caroline, a day of important meetings for President Zelenskyy. What else is Joe Biden, though, expected to discuss with him during his visit to the capital?
Well, Biden and Zelenskyy are likely to discuss this $24 billion aid package that the US president has put forward to help to continue to support Ukraine in its fight against Russia. But as you rightly mentioned there, the really important meetings are going to be happening potentially between Zelenskyy and members of Congress just this morning. He's going to be meeting different party members from both sides of the aisle and really trying to convince them to push forward this funding bill to allow US Congress to continue to support Ukraine with an additional $24 billion. Now, President Biden has already helped Zelenskyy in the last couple of years in helping the US fund $100 billion worth of aid. That's economic, that's security, that's humanitarian aid. And that'll be up for discussion again when they meet in the White House here just behind me later today. But it's a really critical time for Zelenskyy to be meeting members of Congress because there is some kind of waning support, particularly among Republicans, for the US to continue to support Ukraine. We have in the US a massive debate right now over government spending overall. And in fact, in about a week and a half time, September 30th, there is a deadline for an agreement on government spending. And if there isn't an agreement, we could see a partial government shutdown. So there are some real wider issues here that could get in the way of members of Congress and, in fact, helping President Biden to continue to support Zelenskyy.
There are indeed two sides of the aisle in Congress, Caroline. And as you say, there's been growing dissent among US lawmakers on just how much Washington is spending on Ukraine. How likely is the new aid package to be approved?
Well, in terms of the numbers, Republicans are saying they do think they still have enough of a majority to push through this funding. But at the same time, there's a concern over the long-term strategy for Ukraine. Now, of course, Ukraine is part of a counteroffensive right now against Russia. I was listening just yesterday to the National Security Advisor to the White House, John Kirby, who was saying that they see some progress in that counteroffensive. But really, the minority of Republicans are concerned over the longer-term strategy. How is it that Ukraine will continue to push back the Russian offensive in its country? And how long, essentially, will the United States need to continue to support Ukraine? Because really, they don't see this plan as pushing forward enough to be able to continue to use that aid. And of course, we've heard that Zelenskyy has been pushing for support globally, of course, at the United Nations as well. He's particularly concerned, of course, about Russia's veto power in the Security Council. One proposal he's put forward is for reform so that the UN General Assembly, that's 193 members around the world, with a two-thirds majority, could actually push through some support and vote against Russia. Right now, Russia has that voting power on the Security Council. And he's saying ultimately that the UN needs to be doing more with its voting power so that Ukraine doesn't have to be losing all its soldiers on the battlefield. And that's likely to be the argument that he puts forward when he does meet with members of Congress this morning.
Caroline, thank you. Caroline Malone there in Washington, D.C.